This is the Enrichment Sports Source with your host, John Pennington.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into the Enrichment Sports Source. Rough night in Missouri last night for the Volunteers, a 31-3 loss. We're going to break that down. We're going to talk a whole heck of a lot about Josh Dobbs because we know that's what's on your mind today. We'll look at the offensive line. We'll look at the run game. We'll look at the lack of team speed. We'll see how much of this is coaching. We'll talk about all of it in this jam-packed show. First segment, as always, brought to you by our good friends at Enrichment Federal Credit Union. And car buyers out there, you need to finance or refinance with Enrichment Federal Credit Union. Their auto rates start as low as 1.99% fixed APR on all 2009 through 2013 models with up to 66 months to repay. And if you've already financed your car through another lender, it's not too late to switch. In fact, move your auto loan to Enrichment Federal Credit Union and you can get up to $200 in cash right back on the spot. Enrichment Federal Credit Union, 8 Knoxville area locations to check out, and look them up at enrichmentfcu.org. All right, we got a big jam-packed show as usual. Here's the cast of characters as they're coming up a little later. Shazon Bradley, Chuck Cavaleris, Vince Ferrara, Sterling Hinton, Will Overstreet, Bobby Scott, and then we've got a big group here on the desk already. We got Jimmy Himes from 990, the sports animal. We got Bob Hodge, freelance contributor with the Knoxville News Sentinel. And we got former Vol offensive lineman David Ligon, who we're going to put on the spot later in today's show. I want to start with Joshua Dobbs. Let's just look at his numbers to begin with if we got them. It was kind of a Dobbs Day afternoon for Tennessee's new quarterback. Not a tremendous performance. Well, that's not the right full screen. Let's go ahead and take that out. We'll figure it out. There we go. 26 of 42, 61%, 240 yards, 5.7 average, not very good. No TDs, 2 touchdowns, and a lost fumble. Guys, was that debut a complete bust? I mean, there's some folks out there saying, I hope Riley Ferguson can play and that kind of stuff. Bob, you saw it this morning. Was that a complete bust, or did you see some positives?
I saw positives. I don't think it was a complete bust. He showed quick decision-making. When he runs the ball, he seems like he runs pretty well, pretty fast, athletic-looking kid. And he didn't get some help sometimes from his receivers. He threw some high balls. I thought a couple of them should have been, maybe could have been caught. And then he threw a perfect pass.
Josh Smith.
And Josh Smith doesn't come up with it. So I don't think he got a lot of help. I thought he showed more promise than problems going forward.
He also, Marquez North also lost one that looked like it could have been caught. Lost one in the lights, it seemed.
Yeah.
He didn't get much help at all. Your thoughts on Dobbs?
I thought there were more positives than negatives. The completion percentage is good. If you add about 4 drops, it's even better. He had 52 yards on 3 zone reads. He scrambled 4 other times. I think he fits this system better than Worley. Mm-hmm. And I think going forward, you got to remember this is a true freshman making his first start on the road, hostile environment against a top 10 team. And a team that does a good job of stopping the run. I think they were 3rd in the SEC in run defense going in. So all of those things considered, I felt going into the game he had to get help from his offensive line, his running backs, and his receivers, and he didn't.
Nope.
And so I thought, all things considered, I thought he did fairly well, and I'm more encouraged by what I saw out of him than I am discouraged.
I am too. I think that you look, I mean, no knock on Justin Worley, but even if he got healthy late in the season, I think Dobbs gives you a better chance. I see more upside, especially moving forward. Yeah. Just keep him in there and see what you can develop. David, looking your thoughts on Josh Dobbs.
Well, I think we all expected to see some mistakes. He's a true freshman starting on the road for the first time. You know, some of those early throws that were high, I think you can attribute that to just the nerves and the adrenaline going. I mean, if he wasn't nervous, he's not a human being. So going out there, makes some really nice throws, does some good things with his feet. One of the interceptions, he's got a defender on his back coming from behind. I think clips his arm a little bit. He's got to get better blocking from the line. And, who knows what happens if he's able to throw it. Now, he did throw some right into the face of a couple defenders that weren't caught and weren't intercepted, so he lucked out there. But overall, positive things, negative things. Didn't really expect a whole lot different, though, for a true freshman starting on the road.
I agree. I think when you look at quarterbacks making their first start, typically they're in a position to make more mistakes because they're used to being the guy on Friday night. I'm the best guy on the field. I can fit it in this hole. I can take off and run for this first down. And all of a sudden in college, there are 21 other guys on that field that are just as good as you are. So I think you're going to have some of those growing pains for Dobbs. I thought the run where he fumbled, get out of bounds, kid. They're going to knock your head off.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
And have your own guy get out of your way so you can get out
that
of
would
bounds.
Help.
That would have helped him too.
That would have helped. But I saw someone last night say, well, this guy doesn't remind you of Peyton Manning. And I thought, actually he does. I remember Peyton Manning getting booed at Neyland Stadium, that Florida game when he was a freshman. People wanted Brandon Stewart in there because Manning didn't look that great as a freshman in that game against a top 10 team. I think that people need to ease up a bit on Josh Dobbs. I was impressed with what I saw. Do you think that they held him back running the football at all? I mean, he didn't run a whole lot, and it looked like a lot of those plays, it was a lot like Worley. I thought that it was predetermined that the running back's going to get the ball on this one. Thoughts?
I really didn't know if it was predetermined if he was going to run or not. It looked to me, and I commented to you one time while we were talking during the game, it looked like he should have pulled it and ran more than he did. Now, which you could have had them saying, look, don't go crazy with this because our backup is another freshman and he's kind of dinged up a little bit, so maybe they did hold him back a little bit, but you'd almost have to go back and see game tape to be able to see. But, I was really impressed when he did run. Mm-hmm. I was really impressed by it. I wished he had ran more.
Right, and I think it was clear that he was the one tool you had that could run, and you didn't see him do more of it. That leads me to believe they may not have wanted him out there running all over the field.
It crossed my mind. I'd put the over-under with him keeping it at 4, and
right on
we both agreed that it would be over 4. Yeah. We were wrong, but I thought he might have kept a little bit more. Maybe in the back of their mind they were thinking we can't afford to have him injured. But you also need to make sure he's able to run it, because then if you don't, you're taking away a lot of what he brings to the table, and a lot of what your offense is trying to do.
I think you have to keep this in mind too. Is when they're running that, if they're running a zone play, it may be a called run because you don't have a fullback or anybody coming over to cut the backside end off. So him acting like he's running a zone read is the threat to the defender that he might run it. That's hopefully enough to cause that defensive end to pause and open up, allow the line to wash. And then there's your running line.
Let's talk about a lot of the false starts last night. We're going to talk about the offensive line in the next segment. Mm-hmm. But since this is kind of on Dobbs as well, a lot of talk about, it's a new cadence, got to get ready. We got to get used to the new cadence. Your thoughts on the false starts and what you were seeing last night?
And it's hard for me to say exactly because I don't know if it's an audible type where he's calling out the cadence, and really you see a guard on one side looking back for a cue. It looks to be a visual cue, so there's probably not anything going on from a verbal standpoint. I can understand a couple times, particularly if it's on the opposite side of the line as the guard that's looking back and then touching the center to go. He may not be able to see that, and there's no visual cue to say, okay, that's it, 1,001 go.
As opposed to when you played, for example, the center with Bobby's head once or twice.
He looks underneath his legs and he sees the visual cue. It's a clapper. It's pick your foot up. You come to the top and 1,001 go. Everybody gets on the same page. You work on it all the time. Both sides of the line can see that.
All right, guys, when we come back, we're going to talk more about the offensive line. We're going to talk about Tennessee's overall lack of speed. I think if there was any glaring issue last night, it was the lack of speed. It was a lot like the Oregon game in some ways, and that may be the case next week with Auburn. We'll discuss. Come on back on the Enrichment Sports Source.